Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
This is KRWG Public Media, TV, radio, online. News that matters. Now, across the Mesilla Valley and the borderland, the stories that shape our community. From the KRWG Broadcast Center at New Mexico State University, this is Newsmakers.
Hello and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Anthony Murnau. Joining us today is Las Cruces International Airport Administrator, Andy Hume. Andy, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Anthony.
Now, I know there's a lot of excitement about what's happening at the airport, but I'd like to hear from you. What is it that you're most excited about that's happening at the airport right now?
Well, right now, Anthony, I have to say that what's most exciting is the increased attention that the airport is getting. We're seeing increased activity at the airport with more planes coming in. We have a barbecue restaurant up at the airport, so we see folks coming in from in town. When I first started here, it was a really sleepy little airport, and now we're starting to see the results of our labor, in trying to get the word out and just trying to increase the activity, increase the attention of this wonderful asset.
So what are some of your major goals right now that you're working towards to establish the airport and grow economic development out there?
Well, one of your answers is in the question there, the making the airport an economic development engine for the region. Really, that is a role airports can play all over the country. And so particularly in the relationship between the airport and the Innovation and Industrial Park, building that synergy, building that relationship with other commerce, other businesses that want to come in, certainly is important. And then, of course, one of the goals that has recently been talked a lot about is passenger air service, bringing passenger air service back to Las Cruces. So we're working on that, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that as this conversation goes forward. But I think those are really the two big things: economic development engine and passenger air service.
Now, driving that economic development engine, I mean, what are some things that you're having to deal with right now? Because with this pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, which many of us are hoping we are, there's a lot of uncertainty. So dealing with that uncertainty and still trying to reach towards these goals, how do you do that?
I have to say a big way of doing that is building partnerships. There is no one person, no one agency that can come out of this pandemic alone. Really, the work of the City Economic Development Department, the State Economic Development Department, a lot of our partners in Mavita, Chamber of Commerce. It takes all of us really to make that change happen. And the relationships that we've been building, particularly over the last, I'd say 12 to 18 months, have really been critical in moving that forward. And I think we're starting to see the results for sure.
What are some of the opportunities that are available to more smaller regional airports like the one in Las Cruces that may not have been available, say, 10 years ago?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think that there are, I think some of those opportunities are more the self-made opportunities. Again, having an industrial park immediately adjacent to us, really tapping into the potential that's there to grow cargo operations. And the other one I'd say is probably space, commercial aerospace. With Spaceport America's activities, which are very unique, how do we partner with them and play a role in supporting commercial aerospace in our region? We're very fortunate to have a commercial aerospace startup here on the airfield. And we can provide a support network for companies like that. So I think that's a really interesting opportunity that, to your question, 10 years ago maybe wasn't available.
So what are some of those opportunities with commercial space that you think the Las Cruces Airport may be able to capitalize on?
Sure. Well, the first thing I'll say is we cannot compete with what Spaceport America does as far as flights. They have the restricted airspace, and they have some really amazing qualities in that regard. But where I think we have a good niche to fill is in the research, in testing, in development, those types of things, where we can provide maybe components quicker because we're right near a city. I think there's some aspects that we can provide that would augment, would enhance what Spaceport America can provide.
What are some of the challenges in just getting the awareness about the airport out there to the community and to potential entrepreneurs or investors?
Well, I'll tell you, Anthony, I had the privilege of serving as downtown coordinator for a few years at the city. And when I first started, I would tell people, "Oh yeah, I work in downtown. I do downtown revitalization," and people would say, "We have a downtown," you know. So even in the middle of town, a tremendous asset that we have in Las Cruces was just not necessarily ignored, but it wasn't recognized. And so we're kind of in the same situation here at the airport. I tell people, "Oh yeah, I work at the airport," and they say, "You drive all the way to El Paso?" And so helping to recognize, number one, that we actually do have an airport here, and it has a type of vibrancy that's growing, that's very different from El Paso, but it's our own. It's really unique to what we have to offer here. That's one opportunity, one challenge to overcome. And then I'd say the other is infrastructure development. You really need two main things when you're trying to get an airport going. You need pavement and you need power. And so getting taxi lanes extended, making sure that the airfield has plenty of electricity and water, perhaps, those types of infrastructure, that's another challenge that we have.
How big of a challenge is it dealing with water issues out there at the airport? This is something, I mean, we all deal with water issues in the Southwest and in our region, but with an airport, how important is it?
Well, I would say that we would want to approach water usage the same way from a sustainability and resiliency perspective, and I think we do. We're very aware of issues if we have water leaks or those types of things. I know our tenants are very aware of that because they pay a water bill just like everybody else does. As we move forward, we want to make sure that whatever industries we work with have water saving, sustainable practices, those types of things, and we want to build that into the way that we build the airport, not have it as an afterthought.
So share with us a little bit more about the facilities that are available there at the Las Cruces Airport that you think may be attractive to airlines.
Absolutely. So one of the first things that we like to tell folks is we have 3 runways. And that is really critical because with the winds that we can experience here, like the last few days here in southern New Mexico, not only do they roar pretty good, but they also can switch very quickly as a storm moves through, or certainly depending on the season. And so having 3 runways is really important because aircraft really do their best when they take off and land into the wind. And so having those options is really critical. One of the other benefits that we have, particularly for a smaller airport like ours, is we have what's called an instrument landing system. So when, for instance, NMSU, the football team, returns from a game, they come in on a big jet, and those big jets have instrument systems. And so those 2 instrument systems talk to each other and enable a safe landing. So that's not a type of system that most smaller airports like ours have. So we're very fortunate to have that.
So how strong is the competition for regional airports to really land companies? Can you give us an understanding of that?
That's an interesting question, and it's one that we're kind of delving into a little bit because of our relationship with the Doñana Jetport in Santa Teresa. Certainly, they have a very cargo-focused perspective on their operations, and my counterpart down there, Bill Province, great guy. We communicate regularly, and we make sure that we bring a different aspect of cargo or other types of services. Again, not wanting to directly compete with them because in many ways we can't. We're not, a mile from the border or things like that. And so finding the areas, for instance, in aerospace, in value-added ag, and those types of things that we can support with the Innovation Industrial Park, I think are really critical to set us apart.
So with economic development right now, how important is it to really reach the goals that you want to when there's also these other things you have to keep up with, like safety regulations, when you're trying to strive for those goals and then still keep updated with the regulations? I mean, can you share with us a little bit about that process and how you really strive to achieve everything with keeping all these balls in the air, I should say, when you're sort of juggling many different things when you're dealing with state, city, federal, of course, combining all of those things? How do you reach your goal?
Well, I don't know how long your program is, so that's a really big question. I'll try to make I'll try to answer that as best I can. First and foremost is safety and security, always. The safety of our users, the pilots, anybody who comes in, say on an air ambulance or a business jet or something like that. Safety is always number one. And so in order to do that, following the compliance with FAA protocols, Department of Transportation, even when we're talking about EPA and the Environment Department, those are really critical things that we need to comply with, absolutely, because the safety of the users must come first. And I think that when you look at the safety record overall in aviation, in not just here at our airport, but in the nation as a whole, really bears out the importance of that. Now
the flip side. All right, let's hear it.
Yeah. Now the flip side. So there is a lot of work to do to maintain that. In fact, we have a certain certification that we have to undergo an annual review by the FAA. But at the same time, how do we grow the airport? How do we, as I mentioned earlier, build those relationships? Those are really critical because, we have a staff of 5 here to run the airfield.
Wow.
And so it's those relationships where we get other people involved and get that larger energy involved. That's really critical so that we can focus on the compliance, but also be able to grow.
So how was the airport really able to continue with this mission during the pandemic? I'm thinking of the early days when everything just kind of shut down. How was the airport affected?
So it was very interesting. We had 2 groups of individuals out of our staff of 5. We had essential personnel and non-essential. So those who were non-essential, for example, believe it or not, myself and my admin assistant, we worked from home. And so we set up our own little home offices, and through our emails and other communications, we kept our part of the airport going. And then we had our essential personnel, those folks who were out here sweeping, mowing, making sure that the lights come on properly and everything. So the airport never shut down. Certainly activity got a lot less. There was a lot less activity. But we never shut down. We kept things going 24/7 like we always do.
How important is federal funding with your mission there to keep everything going?
Federal funding is critical, particularly when it comes to capital projects. When you're talking about a runway extension, which may cost $6 million, for a local entity, any local entity really, to be able to fund a project like that is very difficult. So having the federal funding, and also I will say participation from New Mexico DOT is really critical to help us. So usually the FAA provides 90% of funding for that type of project, and the New Mexico DOT does 5%, and we do 5%. And so it makes those critical capital investments possible.
Now, you mentioned that there's a restaurant out at the airport. Having these amenities, how crucial are they to growing economic development out there?
Well, I think going back to my example earlier of downtown, when there was no food downtown, when there was no place that you could, go hang out with some friends and have a beer or something like that, it detracted from downtown being a destination. So having an amenity like a restaurant, improving the landscaping and creating destinations for people at the airport, other than maybe the passenger air service. Maybe this restaurant is so awesome that you want to come out here and eat here, regardless of whether you're going on a flight. So those amenities, I think, are really important as far as bringing in a larger audience and exposing people to this wonderful asset.
So can you share with us a little bit about what's available right now for commuters in the area that want to use the Las Cruces Airport?
Okay. So right now we do not have any passenger air service. We are in the process of putting together what's called an intrastate service. That would be service from here to Albuquerque, mostly. And we're getting very close to hopefully an announcement soon on that. But we have that's one thing that we're setting up. That's going to be kind of on a smaller aircraft, and so fewer passengers right now. But as we get that established, and as excitement grows about that, and it's used more and more, the demand goes up, right? Supply and demand. So that will open up, I think, opportunities for larger aircraft and for going destinations other than within the state.
Now, we already talked about water issues, but dealing with, obviously climate issues in our area and with the aviation industry, can you share with us a little bit about how perhaps it's going more green?
Absolutely. I think there's a couple of good ways it's doing that. One is the aircraft themselves. You have constant refinement and improvement in engines becoming more fuel efficient. There are a lot of developments on electric aircraft, electric motors for aircraft. And so I think you're seeing that. There's also, we got rid of leaded fuel a long time ago for automobiles. And so we're seeing a phase out of leaded fuel for aircraft. The flip side is our facilities. Our airport is all LED, so we've gotten all of the older technology of lighting, and we also have a couple of significant solar panel installations now at our airport. And just as an illustration, from 1 month to the next, we saw a decrease from about $3,000 in our electric bill down to about $800. So I'm really happy to be able to tout those things because I think we were the first actually all LED airport in the state. We just barely beat out Santa Fe. So I'm very, very proud of that and very proud to be leading in that.
So how far is the airport from downtown Las Cruces?
Oh, I'd say about 9 or 10 miles from downtown. It's basically straight out Picacho.
How, going towards the mission and your goals, how is it with transportation, getting people to and from the airport? You mentioned that you may have an important announcement coming up with potential passenger travel. That sounds very exciting. But what about just getting people to and from the airport?
That is a very fair question, Anthony. Right now, it is a challenge. Uber and Lyft do come out here, but as stated before, it's kind of a hike for us. 10 miles is, we don't think of 10 miles as going too far, but it takes time to get out there. We don't have any transit service at this point. And so we do have some challenges to overcome as far as getting people either out to the airport for their flight, or when people come, for example, to visit or for business. we do have to look at how we get people, as they say, that last mile from the airport to their hotel or what have you. We're exploring options. Certainly, we work with rental agencies, but we need something that's probably going to be a little quicker, a little more on demand, or at least certainly something that's more scheduled, perhaps, that we can get into a good rotation with, as we get that customer demand.
Now, besides transportation, is there anything that you would love to see near the airport that could really help grow the airport?
Oh, absolutely. More restaurants, hotels, I think would be very important out here, especially when you have maybe somebody, we've had some film actors come in recently. Sometimes their pilots need a place to stay for a period of time. So having a place near the airport, they do like staying near their aircraft. They want to make sure it's taken care of and stuff. So having some type of hotel here would be very beneficial. I think those would be two really key components to help grow the airport.
Now, you mentioned the film industry. There's been a lot of excitement around Las Cruces, of course, with recent productions. Do you see this possibly improving service and what you're trying to do at the airport?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the biggest issues that I've heard is particularly with crews. So maybe there's a need to bring a particular type of crew member into Las Cruces. A 3-mile drive from Albuquerque is a long drive. I mean, I know we've all made it before, but it can be a long drive versus a 50-minute flight. That makes a whole world of difference. And now you get off the plane, you have your equipment there, and you're much fresher and ready to go in your job. So I do think that there's going to be some good synergy between the two industries, and I think we can really do a lot to support the film industry.
Now, with the aviation industry, we've seen airlines across the country face many challenges, especially when the pandemic hit. What are your concerns right now at this time with the industry?
I think there's two main concerns, and these are going to be echoed across the industry. One is a pilot shortage. For whatever reason, sometimes being a pilot is not as cool to younger ones who want to figure out what they want to be when they grow up. And so, unfortunately, a lot of pilots, as they've aged, there isn't the next generation, or there maybe hasn't been the training of the next generation as maybe we would have liked to have seen. So I think that's going to be a real critical problem. The other is aircraft mechanics. There's a shortage of people who are well trained. As I mentioned before, safety is always a primary issue, and so keeping the aircraft in good repair is very critical. But there's a shortage of aircraft mechanics. The flip side is, I think there's a great opportunity at our airport to have schools for pilots. We have actually a couple of flight schools here, but also maybe a school for aircraft mechanics. These are really good paying jobs that I think would be great, and maybe excite folks about, especially the younger ones, about being in the aviation field.
Have you had any conversations with educational institutions to really grow that base?
We actually have had a couple of conversations. There's a school in, I believe it's at Aviation, New Mexico, in Roswell, that may be interested. There's also a school from the Northeast that would be interested, perhaps, in at least providing us with their curriculum. It's a very well established curriculum. We've had some good conversations. We need a building to host some of those classes and stuff in. So we need to get some of the investment to get it started. But we do have interest.
Okay, now we just have about a minute left, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of your major goals that you have in the next few years with the airport.
Well, certainly overall building aviation activity, including general aviation, military, passenger air service, really making this airport a hub of activity, making sure that it stands out as an economic driver. We talked about that a little bit. and making sure that we can be a source of good jobs and also a source of pride for our community.
Okay, now, is there any way folks can find out some more information and stay updated with what's happening at the airport?
Absolutely. We have a Facebook page, Las Cruces International Airport. We also have our website through the city of Las Cruces, where we have our master planning update going on. So, and as always, feel free to give us a call.
All right, Las Cruces International Airport Administrator Andy Hume, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Anthony.
That's our time for now. You can join us this week on KRWG Radio every weekday. It's morning edition 5 to 9, fresh air at 11, followed by Here and Now, noon to 2, and of course, All Things Considered from 4 to 7. KRWG News is always online at krwg.org, and we'd like to hear from you. You can always email us with story ideas and video submissions. The address is feedback@nmsu.edu. Of course, we're on social media. You can always give us the thumbs up on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. And a nice way to stay updated with past episodes of Newsmakers is by subscribing to the KRWG News YouTube channel, where you can view many past episodes, reports, and special programs from KRWG Public Media. From all of us at KRWG Public Media, I hope you have a wonderful week. I'm Anthony Murno. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.